process. So hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us online today. Welcome to the fourth Arcus Alliance webinar on EMI, so English as a medium of instruction. My name is Katie Reschenhover and I'm an assistant professor in English for academic purposes at Vilnius University. And it is my great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Leva Žebrytė from Vilnius University in Lithuania. So Dr. Leva Žebrytė is an associate professor at the Department of Business at Vilnius University, where she teaches both undergraduate and postgraduate level courses in cross-cultural management and cross-cultural negotiations, both of which are taught in English. And she was previously also the director of community engagement of the Faculty of Law and Business Sciences at the Universidad de la Frontera in Chile. And Leva also has, of course, extensive teaching experience, teaching subjects like business English, legal English, international organization, and international business in the south of Chile. So a lot of international experience there. And today, Leva's talk is all about global citizenship and entrepreneurial competencies and how these relate to EMI. And after Leva's presentation, we will follow up with a Q&A. And the Q&A will not be recorded. So with that, I give the floor to you, Leva, and please feel free to get started at any time.
All right. Thank you. So let's get out of the way all the usual technical difficulties of presenting on Teams. Is it okay? Can you see my slide?
Yes, perfect. It's perfect.
All right, great. Thank you. And thank you for this generous introduction. Today's topic, as you can see, is quite fit, right, for this series of Arcus webinars. But it definitely comes with a twist, which is connected specifically to my own experience and what the so generous presentation of my career experience summarized is my own intercultural experience, not only in the classroom, but being a community engagement director, as well as guiding thesis in multiple languages, in Spanish and English and Lithuanian since 2010, end of 2010. So just for in terms of the summary, I used to teach English for special purposes, so legal English and business English. However, language teaching as such is not really my focus right now in this stage of my career. What I'm mostly focused on is delivering teaching that is of high quality to the international audiences of students. And as you can see here on this slide, it comes with a lot of question marks, which, even though I am invited here to present to you at the seminar, to present you with solutions, and I will share helpful tools at the end, I must admit that my search and research for fun, interesting, memorable, effective teaching is, as you can see, continuous. And these question marks show that what I am always thinking about when I'm teaching my students, for example, cross-cultural management or cross-cultural negotiations, is not only about what I know or understand about culture and how different cultures, for example, influence English as a medium of instruction, right? We sort of speak the same language, but actually it's not the same English, right? Spoken everywhere in the world. When I was teaching in Chile, I used to teach both in English and in Spanish. And it would be such a different feeling of when I'm right now in the classroom in Lithuania, with a lot of Southeast Asian, African students, and Lithuanian students who have grown up, for example, around the world. And when they come back to Lithuania and get their sort of former expat or former migrant, ex-migrant scholarship, right, this incentive to study back in Lithuania, they choose English, to study in English, because it is a bit easier for them, but they, at the same time, they come from all over Europe, for example, from all over the world. So their understanding of what, culture is, or how culture influences their performance in cross-cultural management classroom, in cross-cultural negotiations classroom, is this constant, interrogation, is this constant question mark that I grapple with. And I use two competence frameworks, the entrepreneurial competence or entrepreneurship competence framework and global citizenship framework, when I try to make sense in an active way of, how cultural values impact what I do, but also what is valued by me, how I create value in the classroom, and what is valued both by the learners, by the students, and by myself. And what I have realized over this period that I have been working as a lecturer and as adult educator and as lifelong learning educator in Chile, I have noticed that what learners, want in terms of their experience in the classroom is not actually knowledge. It is as my conclusions go, they want a meaningful experience in the classroom, because as we all are aware right now, knowledge or facts we can easily get through just our phones, through these various devices. However, how we interpret the information that we get, how we actually convert it into knowledge, is mediated, is informed, is impacted by our culture. In this slide, you can see just a little example of how values-based, values-charged entrepreneuring education, required me, when I was teaching in Chile, to understand how my Mapuche, the indigenous students in the south of Chile, how my Mapuche students, my Mapuche learners, because I was also in adult education in that sphere, what are their cultural values, how they understand, what's their worldview, how they cosmovision, as they call it, what's their understanding of the world. And here, these little two pictures that you can see here, for example, helped my students to inform me, right, to teach me of how they understand the world. So this star that you can see here in blue shades, in the shades of blue, shows the order of the world according to the understanding of the indigenous people in the south of Chile, specifically the Mapuche people. When there is a disbalance, when there is no equilibrium in the system, when a person acts against the values that are at the core of their culture, what happens is this phenomenon that is depicted here in this other picture with brown and sand colored and orange and fuchsia colored cards, right? So these are when the values are out of order, and accordingly, this disorder, so to say, difficult students, learners' creativity, impacts their ability to learn, to learn from me, let's say, from what I'm teaching in the classroom, right? So I had to be made aware of how their worldview works. What are these values? I appreciate that this is a very small font. Don't worry about trying to read it. I just wanted to show you what my learners did, prepared, some visuals for me that they actually later on actually published in their master's thesis, but how they informed me, educated me, right, of how their values influence, for example, this product. What you see now here in this table is business ideas that I asked students to work on. And these were Maori and Mapuche students. So Maori from Aotearoa, you know very well, Maori from New Zealand. Learners came in to work with the Mapuche students on business models and business ideas, on development of culture, on business models that value culture, that actually put, both commercialize, but at the same time regenerate the Mapuche culture, normalize that culture. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, for example, these amazing results of students working, 30 Maori and Mapuche students achieving the results in 1 week would not have been possible if I hadn't taken into account the cultural values, the worldview of the Mapuche people that was summed up in that slide with these differently colored cards. Further on, why do learners need and want a culturally sensitive education? Why am I combining both the global citizenship, this cross-cultural framework for evaluating a competence, and also entrepreneurial framework for understanding how people develop competences, is because another example you can see here from the business perspective, we use in the Western culture, those of you who teach entrepreneurship or business model development, we use canvases, right? So business model canvas is quite a famous tool. Well, these what you see here, this circle with a firebird at the center, is a product of master's students, 2 master's students who are presenting there. You can see marked with a pink arrow, who presented the results of their master's thesis, where they came up with a canvas alternative for the business model canvas from our Western worldview. They based it on their Firebird Nation, so the First Nations of Canada. They have based it on, obviously, on the drum, right, which represents both the universe and their cultural, the way that the communities work together, the way that their own indigenous nation produces value, creates and exchanges value. This is just to give you an idea of what kind of sense making and takes place, and how students' identities, are linked to all sorts of learning. And in this case, was a master's in business management, an MBA, master's in business administration thesis. So obviously, not seemingly far away from cultural studies. It's a commercial endeavor that they were invited to contribute to, and that's what they did, right? Because cultures are inalienable from students' learning. So finally, to already move on to a theoretical framework, which I actually work with, is the last slide about why do learners want this culturally sensitive, values-laden experience, culturally relevant experience in the classroom. Is again here, it's in Spanish, it is just a representation of the various actors of the entrepreneuring ecosystem that is in La Araucanía region in the south of Chile. It's just the idea of this visual is to show you, right, how many actors are there, and these yellow threads are connection, these synergetic connections for an entrepreneurial ecosystem actors. The pink arrows, what they are showing is where students can feel that they are represented. There are some student foundations, there are these student associations and other instances where they are spelled out that their culture, student culture, young people culture, not just ethnic culture, which I just mentioned a couple of slides ago when talking about the previous two slides, but also there is this youth culture, LGBTQ subculture, right, that we as educators should be aware of. And in this example, and I'm putting forward this example because students, whenever they are taught to come up with business models or develop entrepreneurial ideas, they have to be also shown that this is not just a classroom futile, like classroom exercise which helps them learn, but does not contribute to anything else. It is up to us, the educators, to show that it actually does. And in this case, these students' efforts are clearly reflected in this ecosystem, and through these 3 points that you can see here with pink arrows, I usually demonstrate the students use in Chile how their efforts, their products, their just ordinary classroom work actually is impactful in the terms of their ecosystem. And the theoretical framework that I use to understand how these things connect, like the practices, the things that happen in the learning environment, how they connect with bigger things in society, like with other, you might say, macro levels in society. So I use the practice theory of practice. If we take Bourdieu's framework, which you see right here, with the quite famous terms of habitus and capitals, intellectual capital, social capital. I'm sure you have many times looked at how social capital impacts learning, or how learning, education, impacts social capital of a human being. But also I am very conscientious, I will show you in 2 more slides, about other elements of the practice theory, such as doxa, nomos, and illusio, and how they very directly impact our understanding, our identifying ourselves with culture, and how various cultural elements impact the learning process. And this framework, which looks at that I use to actually examine the material, processual, and relational aspects of the things that we do and the things that we think. So do in this theory of practice, you can basically sum up something that is a theory that studies what we do, but thinking is also doing, right? In practice theory of practice. Research realm in that paradigm. And it helps me, at least, I use it to examine, to understand how learning as practice happen. This is a bit farther away from what we already use frequently as communities of practice, for example, but it is a bit related in a way that whenever I examine what actually students are doing, how they are learning, what happens in the classroom, I usually look, what kind of habitus they're coming from, what are their intellectual, cultural, social capitals, how they interact with the field. So this is, I usually use ecosystem and field interchangeably, because in like heavy duty theoretical discussion, I would talk of fields, but it is basically just to make things more simple here in this conversation, I treat it as with this simplified term of more broadly used term of ecosystem. All right, and as you can see here, the global citizenship competences and entrepreneurial competences, the frameworks I will get to just in a second, they interact, at least in my understanding of how I develop and implement the curricula and the syllabus for specific curricular elements, right? How they interact with, in general, the other competences that are that the broader program, right? The general program, not only my course, focuses on. So we can come back to these details of relationality, materiality, and processuality aspects later on. Maybe you will have some questions of how I actually in practice use it, but I want to get to the global citizenship, specifically these intercultural competences and entrepreneurial competences, and how to actually measure them in the classroom. Because this long wound up and introduction was actually needed for you to be able to understand where I am coming from and how and why I'm suggesting these specific tools. So how we can treat learning as becoming in our classrooms, and specifically, what are the tools that we could actually use to evaluate students' competences, right? So first one I wanted to share with you today is this global citizenship framework. We, Melton Foundation, universities involved in Melton Foundation have developed this pre-test and post-test, that I'm actually happy to share the questionnaires. It's a survey that I give my students at the start of the classes that I teach in English. And also it is the survey that I give them after the class, right? So as you can see here, it's S1, S8. These letters and numbers basically mean seminar 1, so during the first seminar, and seminar 8 during the last seminar. It's due to the way our semester is structured. So strictly speaking, is week 1 and first week and last week of the semester, and the scale measures what you can see here. I will quickly share the results, and it's actually more the text of the in the previous slide is much better illustrated in this little UNESCO Global Citizen visualization, like the UNESCO Global Citizen Framework, visualization on this slide. So here the numbers are, again, just indicative. It's a very small sample of 140 students, and because I started applying it last semester, I cannot compare the groups. After this semester, I will be able to compare around 300 students with both pre-test and post-test results. But here, just to show how the tool works, for example, here in the heart, in a blue circle, social responsibility, 21 students feel that they are, or report, feeling capable of acting in a way that would support social responsibility in this UNESCO Global Citizenship framework, competence framework, Only 0.9% of students show lifelong learning capacity, but it most probably is due to the fact that the respondents are first-year students. So they are thinking about how to, be in the university. They are just in the their first year, second semester, they're still figuring out this space. So definitely not thinking about, or working on their lifelong learning capacity. Moving on, though I'm not moving in order indicated here by the numbers, but moving on top where it says 67.2% of students are consider themselves being capable of leading the team. Curiously enough, only 17.2% of students report being fully capable of collaboration aimed at tackling global issues, tackling, working in intercultural teams, right? So they feel, again, maybe it's because it is management students that I research. However, in cross-cultural negotiations class, it is a big, the mix of students is quite diverse, right? So the programs that they study at, they're quite diverse. So maybe it's a generational issue. So anyway, so quite a lot of students feel capable of leading teams with members from multiple cultures, right? But they may be not so fully capable of achieving these results of this collaboration. There are some details in the scale, obviously, and in the questionnaire, but just to highlight these quite interesting results. Finally, a lot of students, almost 76% of students, do not feel ready to take up this intercultural accountability challenges that exist around the world. Again, given their young age, these are 19, 20-year-olds, could be, that they are also more concerned. They are very much aware. So one of the competence aspects is about awareness, but they do not feel ready to, let's say, take on the world. Another tool that I use is EPIC, and it has to do with the entrepreneurial competence framework, the EPIC framework, and basically understanding that entrepreneurial competence has to do with creation of value, so value creation, and this is this sort of very general definition, and we use it because I do not teach entrepreneurship as such, nor do we, in Vilnius University at least, nor do we teach business model generation, social innovation, or just innovation in general, technology innovation, or entrepreneurship. We don't teach it just because everyone has to be on their own, be a founder of an enterprise, of a venture. We obviously, as per a wider European Union direction and strategy, right, we want our students to develop entrepreneurial competence because it is useful in any vocation, in any area. You don't necessarily have to be an aspiring CEO, right? Chief executive officer of a company. Even if you are what students usually like to use this word, just an employee, it still is one of the things that you learn in the university. So I use this questionnaire, like directly what you see right now on the Hey Innovate website. There is entrepreneurial potential and innovation competences, EPIC, and this EPIC tool helps measure the entrepreneurship competence, as you can see depicted here. This visual, this wheel is taken directly. This competence wheel is taken directly from the website of European Union, where it is explained. The entrepreneurship competence is explained and detailed. And just as the other one, the global citizenship one, this wheel as well was taken, global citizenship competence visual was taken from the UNESCO websites and manuals. Here we have the results, the highlights of the study that my colleague was leading at another university, actually, or through another university here in Lithuania. We were looking at older adults. So even though, as I mentioned, I use the EPIC tool also in classroom when I need to measure the sort of the input-output, whether I did a good job teaching entrepreneurial competences, for example, social entrepreneurship or social business classes. I would also apply the EPIC tool before and after. So at the beginning of the instruction, whether it is the beginning of the semester or beginning of a course, and at the end of the instruction. And again, in both cases, it is done in multicultural learners in multicultural, and in English as medium of instruction spaces. But here, just wanted to share something curious. One of the things, one of the aspects, one of the dimensions of entrepreneurial competence is self-efficacy, which is quite curious thing to study. And we looked at with the colleague at older people who are 40 plus entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs, as well as compared to the general population, because we use also GEM data, GES data, and here HDI, the Human Development Index data. And we found these interesting things about entrepreneurial self-efficacy, right? That in the countries with higher human development index, the negative age effects are weaker, which basically means that nascent entrepreneurship, people become entrepreneurs at an older age, less often in the countries which are more developed, but and likewise in the countries with stronger ages norms, so more discrimination, quite still developing countries with younger population, the negative effect of the age is stronger. Again, today's topic is about tools for assessment of competencies. I just wanted to show you how using these measures, these different tools, in this case EPIC tool and data from various studies on entrepreneuring, we can see how our learners, in this case adult learners, are doing and how we can prepare programs, for example, to incentivize what's called silver economy, like silver entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship at an older age, right? Or senior entrepreneurship. Again, depends on which country you're in. This is another just very simple tool that I use in assessing how well I am educating my learners when we are in a entrepreneurial competence development mode, so to say. Giving feedback, peer-to-peer feedback, is one of the important aspects of communication, of the ability to communicate effectively in these entrepreneurial settings. So again, one of the things we have been comparing in this when studying the self-efficacy was actually the way that difference between older adults, aspiring entrepreneurs in older adult population, and also in university student population in the GES survey, how both of these groups differ in terms of their ability to communicate their business ideas. So that was another study that is forthcoming. So again, in this presentation on quite a mixture of both like tools and theoretical frameworks, I more broadly see learners as creators, and at the same time, the specific tasks that I give them during classroom activities have to also do with creation of tools that help me also to understand them better. As I mentioned, these the Canvas, right, or the alternative to Canvas created by the master's students from the First Nations of Canada, or the explanation of the Mapuche world view and the order of things, the values that underline the order of their world, which you might remember from the slide with this blue star shaped figure made up of these blue cards. I also consider that, and that's where, again, very strongly cultural aspects come in, is the learners, the values that they exercise, that they practice, that they live through, or that underline their ways, their practices, the ways of living. They should not only be like reflected in instruction, but they both have to be reflected upon by myself, but also valued in a way that's sort of going to the back to the first point here in the conclusions, asking them to create maybe items, right, maybe some material artifacts, or involve their cultural the aspects of their culture in the process. So as I mentioned, got confused with the arrows. As I mentioned, they could integrate the cultural artifacts and show them off in the classroom, or they could integrate the processes, the rituals, the sort of routines, repetitive modes of doing things into the processual aspects of their of the learning activities that I give them. Then also relations, relationality, how their relations with other human beings, with entities that let's say they believe in, for example, if their culture has a different religion from mine, right, which usually is the case among the students in my classroom, right? So in so much sort of learning happens, it seems, without teaching, or I don't know, mutual teaching, right? Me and my students, we teach each other. And just before I say thank you to you for your attention and open the floor for questions, I also want to thank these various entities. You can see here multiple projects that have made it possible for me to present this to you here today. So
perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eva. That was amazing. That was definitely a good portion of food for thought, and I'm so excited to jump into the Q&A. But before we do, I'm going to end the recording now.